I feel horrible for teams who spend a lot of money on paid advertising and they send, a marketing manager to a site that doesn't answer any of their questions, betrays them from a brand perspective, doesn't show any proof that this company has solved problems for people like me. What is happening, friends? Welcome back to another powerful episode of Marketing by Design. I'm super excited to share this episode with you guys. Recently, I was a guest on my friend Alexander Ferguson's podcast. He is the founder of TerraLeap.io, and they do remote video testimonials for B2B. He is a trusted partner of my studio, and we just had a video jam session. We discussed a lot of things in this episode, such as relationships, referrals, how to build trust in B2B. We talk about my own personal story, and we talk about our own hot takes in the world of websites. Alexander is deep into the trust gaining side of websites. He helps companies record remote video testimonials, and we've seen in our data these to be some of the most effective trust gaining assets on websites. So we really nerd out on how B2B teams, how marketers can use what they have to gain more trust from their websites and convert more visitors, grow revenue, etc. We also talk about AI designed websites, my takes, how we use it in our process, and how marketers can do the same. And if you stick around until the very end, we talk about the single most important thing on all B2B websites in 2026. You're definitely going to want to stick around for that. I want to say a huge thank you to Alexander and the team at TerraLeap for having me on and letting me repurpose it for the Marketing by Design audience. If you want to learn more, all the links and the resources will be in the first link of the description. If you want to learn more about Alexander and TerraLeap, and how to earn trust on websites in general. Super excited to get into this. Happy Tuesday. Shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or shoot me an email if you want to get in touch. And without further ado, enjoy the episode.
I am excited to have Andy Milligan join me today. He's the founder of MMG Design, a Webflow certified web design studio in Columbus, Ohio. And you have helped over 80 B2B brands be able to help them trust through intentional design. And he hosts the Marketing by Design podcast. And he's spent years helping founders figure out why their site looks professional but doesn't convert. Andy, it is good to have you on and chat with you.
Super excited to be chatting, Alex. I thank you for that lovely intro. I'm looking forward to a great chat.
Absolutely. And I'm all about helping people earn trust, helping brands earn trust. And yours is on the design side. Mine is more on like the social customer proof side. And I'm excited to kind of explore that. Okay, how do we help brands actually build that credibility? Marketers want to take credibility seriously. We want to build our businesses, help other people build businesses. It comes down to relationships. Especially in today's AI world, everywhere, it's all about people when it really comes down to it. So one of your episodes, you were talking with Chris LaFay, and he was talking about like building a $1 million agency by mastering relationships. And that really caught my attention. Okay, mastering relationships. Based on what you've learned in that conversation in your time, what do you feel like that it actually takes to do in practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. The whole idea for the podcast was a real world MBA. I've gotten to Chris is one of them. It's a good example that you mentioned, but also people like Andy Crestadina, other agency owners that are more on the full service side, they've done the same thing. I mean, Orbit Media is Andy's agency based in Chicago, and they're at $8 to $10 million a year, and they've never run a single paid ad. Like they've done some paid stuff with conferences and things like that, sponsorships, but they've never, opened up Google ads or we even ran, LinkedIn ads, which was not even what I would classify as the norms of paid marketing. And it's a very eloquent phrase. I think when a lot of people think about leveraging relationships or, capitalizing on relationships, it sounds very transactional. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what business we have, it's always going to be majority percentage based on relationships, referrals, et cetera. And you can be more or less intentional about how you go about creating those. But yeah, that's been kind of the through line of all the big agency owners that, we've done subcontract work for that I've got an interview on the podcast, things like that, is that you basically show up and you go first. So like things like proactive outreach, checking up on people that, you haven't had and you don't actually have a business need for, you just want to reconnect. And the idea of like going first is the idea that Jay Klaus, who's a friend of mine, recommended, is like the mind share that you have with someone when you reach out without having like a pitch slap at the end. Its need does come around. You're much more positioned to be more valuable to them and for them to be more valuable to you. So just the idea of going first and not having a sale or a direct outcome of a conversation in your mind of what success looks like, but being open to just, enjoying the relationship. And I think you can relate to, Alex, as business owners. It's like it can be lonely. It's very helpful to have people on your side along the way. And in the short term, that can be the fulfillment is adding value to other people's lives and, building friendships and relationships in the process.
So much of our energy, our life, our time each day is spent working, and a business owner probably even more. So you're thinking about it at night, you're waking up in the morning, and it's nice when you can enjoy the work that you're doing, and it's not a drain suck, but actually adds energy because you're helping other folks and the way you're executing it. I'm kind of curious for you of an example of a specific relationship that turned into real revenue. I see the business end impact in the end and how it compounds over time. Anything come to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I know I had one prepared for this episode in particular, but even the two that I just mentioned, like Andy and Chris, like I showed up and I gave them like the best interview I possibly could. Hired, a team of editors to make the episode look really good, posted on our platforms, things like that, things that you have done like proactively going first to say like, how can we make this as valuable as I can for the host? Those of like that subcontracting revenue has been a big part of our business. So I live here in Columbus, Ohio. It's a great area for healthcare, for masterminds of like hospital systems. And I've been going to one that an agency in downtown Columbus runs. It's called Zoco Design. They do UX research. And I've been going to those events for like 3 years. And they're not ultimately like sometimes you assess conferences, which is the responsible thing to do as a business owner. Like, how can this be productive, for my business? Like, are there potential conversations that could happen here? But I just always gone to those events with promoting them, volunteering, things like that. And about at the third or fourth time that I went to one of those meetups in downtown Columbus, a guy named Tyler introduced me to his friend named Matt. And Matt, and this is like something that we do as business owners is like, okay, where does our pipeline come from? How did we actually curate that? And then Matt, this is like the second connection, introduced me to a startup ecosystem that was out west. And they ended up being, kind of our whale clients at the end of last year. So like and there was like, between everything I just said, it was like 3 degrees of connection. Like a full year had elapsed between when that sale had actually occurred or when, the project kicked off. Eric Jacobson, he has a video agency. It's more of a podcast production agency here in Dublin. And he calls it like the 95% rule. Like 95% of the people that are in your target audience aren't in the market to buy your services at any given time. So it's really just playing the long game, If people can tell from the beginning, like whether you meet them at a conference or you meet them online on LinkedIn, if you're there persistently for a long time, you're always showing up. And I think we can all relate to like the wavering in terms of intensities and how much content we're putting up, how visible we're actually being. But just being around, showing up, and the long haul is, you're going to win either way.
I firmly believe that the impact of just showing up and truly desiring to help someone makes a huge impact. I mean, I think that's actually the honest reason why we're here on Earth is to bring value to others, help others, love others. And that makes the world definitely a better place. But it's good business logic is a nice concept when you could tie those two pieces together. The challenge, though, I find is like you taking the idea of, okay, be a good person and like connect with people, help people, but turning that into an actual system that you run consistently and not just haphazardly of, I hope I help people this week. I mean, go-to-market strategies and ads, there's always all these layers of systems that you can make sure you're running and you're going to X output at the end. I've had one person I interviewed a while ago that of how they track this. It wasn't for business, for lead gen, but it was still for business. I'm going to share this, and I'm curious of what you found of systems you're working with or have heard from others.
Yeah.
What he did was he's a founder and he started several different companies, sold several of them. And what he tracks every week is how many conversations he has, new and previous, in a big spreadsheet. So he's always meeting new people, even when he doesn't need them. In his case, a lot of times it's with investors or other contacts and relationships that he might need long before he sells. He just is every week tracking, and he's trying to like have at least 1 or 2 conversations every week in these places. And then he says that's what's led to of him selling like 2 or 3 of his companies is a conversation he had 18 months ago or 32 months ago that he didn't need at the time, but he was consistent in his tracking, consistent in the activity of that relationship making. And that just has stuck with me. I've been great at actually being on top of that tracking piece. I'm actually pondering right now, maybe I can use Claude to help me a bit with that of like, all right, track how many people have I talked with last week. You can see my calendar and you see my email. Who do I need to follow up with? Maybe Claude and AI will be a good tool for this. But I'm curious for you, like what systems have you put in place to truly help master relationships in a more system oriented way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is something that I've asked a lot of podcast guests too. And as like with a lot of things, I feel like to where the answer isn't as like as satisfying. I've asked this question multiple times and it's what is the highest leverage use of your time for, lead generation, building the business, things like that. And a lot of times it's some form of, okay, the first thing you should do every day is send 10 emails to people in your network. And you hear that, it's like even, Andy is the guy I interviewed. He's like, okay, like Andy, I'm going to tell you, this is what you have to do. And I'm like, okay, this is the secret right here, like rubbing my hands together. He's like, every day you post a piece of content, you comment on some posts, and you send 10 emails to people in your network. And I was like, okay. But the piece that most people miss with that, Alex, and you know this too, is just the consistency part of it. Because people do it for a couple weeks, and when it's the lag game, it's just such a long-term game. You kind of have to be in it for that first time to actually see the effect. Like that case study I mentioned where there's 3 degrees of connection, it's hard to be reinforced by the results of that if you haven't actually experienced the benefits of like the long-term approach. So that's why I'm sympathetic to people who are just getting started. They don't have the relationship capital. They don't have the connections and things like that to actually compound. And in the beginning, it's just a lot of inputs without seeing what it could actually lead to. But aside from that, like I do have a bit of a system. I built an app using Claude to where I track it just gives like a little confetti animation to how many LinkedIn connections I send. I try and send 20 a day and try and comment on, a number of posts and try and send a number of DMs as well, rather than just reconnecting, going first. And, Alex Hormozy is someone that I've really learned a lot from in the space. He's got great books and he has this thing called the rule of 100 to every day. You should be either sending 100 warm outreaches, 100 cold outreaches, or spend 100 minutes making content. And I try to do that every single day. Like, I think like, especially for people like you and I, like getting business is a large part of the job, especially, we're already good at what we do. That's a lot of times that's why we started doing what we do. Operations can take care of a lot of themselves, but the thing that is like the biggest needle mover towards growth is actually growing the business. And that's what a lot of those activities are. And just the answer around what causes the results isn't as satisfying as, one might hope.
Yeah, so, it's that whole idea of just consistency over a long period of time is usually the success winner. I'm like, gosh, that's kind of a boring answer,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
usually the boring answers are the ones that are the good ones, the ones that win. Well, I'm gonna transition here a little bit and talk more about your area of expertise in web development and a little bit of connection to mine, building trust and credibility. People know that when somebody lands on a website, looks at your content, they're like, okay, you understand the industry, you understand my problems, I can trust you, I want to work with you. And you're very much in the design space, the website, to be able to, okay, when they land there, that they convert. Don't have a whole lot of time to convince them that we are trustworthy, that they should keep reading. So I'm curious for you, what's your philosophy is design and trust and help me understand when somebody lands there, the first 3 seconds they're on that site, what are they actually evaluating and looking at?
I think we share a lot of the same core values around earning trust, the human element of web, which is so impossible to replace. I mean, I won't be an alien and pretend that like a lot of the stuff that's going on with AI search. I mean, even just like last week, Google had like their core update where like SERP rankings, like blue links are totally removed and it's a complete like Gemini experience every time you go to Google. And we have seen like traffic to websites drop like significantly, like up over 60% to B2B sites in the past couple of years. But what most people don't focus on is how infinitely more important it is to convert visitors like that when they do land on your site. Like the stakes have never been higher. And if you, Alex, you know a lot more about business than I do. But when the stakes are high, that's where outcomes really matter. And that's where people like us can position ourselves as experts as delivering on those results. But to the designer's trust piece, like that's just like one of my core values. Like the emotions that you feel like the human side of the web. I feel horrible for teams who spend a lot of money on paid advertising and they send, a marketing manager to a site that doesn't answer any of their questions, betrays them from a brand perspective, doesn't show any proof that this company has solved problems for people like me. Because at the end of the day, like that's what websites are for. They're for earning trust, they're for answering visitors' questions in the exact moment that they have them. And it's for creating like a sticky piece in their mind to where, like, especially people in marketing, they're seeing upward, like oftentimes hundreds of websites a day. So when there's so much more output, that's when your opportunity really arises to create a distinct impression throughout all the noise. And I've made so many pieces of content on this, but the thing that's never going to be replaced is the human side of the web, testimonials, case studies, people that, like I said, people like me achieving the outcomes that I want, literally put in front of me on a platter. Like that'll be so impossible to say no to when there's so much noise these days. But yeah, I think we share a lot of the same sentiments around that. And I mean, design is basically a supporter and reinforcer of all those things.
Mhm.
There's a certain feeling you can capture with people on a website. And I think of like the favorite websites that I have, and I remember them. Like I remember scrolling through the page. I'm a creative at heart. So things like colors and layouts and textures, also balanced with like the technical side of web, which not a lot of people think about, like accessibility, contrast ratios, all those things. It's like a perfect balance. And then the under the hood stuff, like the technical SEO, you know, having the appropriate words on the page, which then affects design because some words are longer than others, and all those things that probably a lot of people don't think about. I just nerd out on. So, but at the end of the day, the human side of web and social proof testimonials is a big part of what makes websites work, and they will be more and more important in the future when there's a lot of noise.
The noise is ever increasing, and as we were just talking about, relationships is what matters. Real people connecting with them is only going to be elevated. I'm kind of curious of like what design patterns that used to signal trust are now kind of the opposite because either everyone's doing it or because of AI, it doesn't matter anymore. What are those design patterns you trying to shy away from? And because they don't add trust, they don't add trust, they don't add value anymore.
Yeah, so you have to think when something becomes abundant in supply, how do you differentiate from it and show that you're one of one? So, I mean, a lot of times, like I don't spend a lot of time trying to convince like our clients of the value of good design. A lot of times when they come to us, they kind of want to be led through the process. But to differentiate yourself, like the answer is easy to me. Like I think we can all recognize like the telltale signs of a website that was built with AI. And you have like the like bento sections with like the half color on the side. You have like the hover interactions. You have like the nice little gradient splotches that appear in the background. Things like that, are going to make you drown into the noise, unfortunately. And I mean, I feel empathy for people. I use these tools as well, just not for design in and of itself. A lot of it's for ideation, putting together wireframes, piecing together content, high value, especially some of the underneath the hood stuff that I mentioned of like piecing all the technical parts together. But when it comes to their marketing team on a budget, I do encourage the use of, building a site with, these tools, but a lot of times they come at the expense of scalability and reliability. For differentiation, there's when it comes to earning trust, like you said, there's some technical, like creative parts of it. Like I'm sure you've heard like blue is a trustworthy color, like soft edges, are, more trustworthy than, hard edges. And I think it comes down to obviously knowing the customer. Like a lot of agencies, a lot of marketers try and design a site that looks good to like their own eyes or to leadership's eyes when they don't talk to their customers first, which is why that's very important. And a lot of times they focus on output versus, actual sales credibility. They don't include a lot of technical parts that make websites work, like FAQs, things like that, that directly speak to the customers. Like now more than ever, we have these tools that can, basically leverage the insights that, customers give us through things like testimonials and feedback. Why not use those tools to more so influence what's going on the website rather than, using it to shortcut design instead?
You were talking about FAQs. I feel like that's a pretty big thing these days. How do you view them? What's the best way to add FAQs and where should they go on the site?
Yeah, like, I mean, they all start with the customer. So when it comes to making them really effective, like we would do a lot of work in healthcare, it's a very default practice to just have one FAQs page and then just dump everything on there. When in actuality, you want to be answering the user's questions, the visitor's questions as they're navigating to that specific part of the website. So for example, like a Medicare company, You want to have Medicare related FAQs, things like Medicare pricing, process, next steps on that page, on that, product page, rather than just having it buried in a master list, because it's not a great UX to do that. Also, you know, to the technical side, FAQ schema, you want to have that on a per page basis and really get relevant and contextual to the content of the page and the traffic that you're trying to draw there. But like I said, all starts with the customer. Like, you should be asking them, like, what were your biggest friction points? Did you have any struggles around pricing? Did you have any struggles in getting started? And focusing on what your best customers are telling you in order to make that journey from, cold audience to paying customer as seamless as possible and making it easy. Like, if people could only see your website, would they have everything they need to become a customer? And if they don't, then there's work to be done,
Yeah. For you, as you're like designing, do you have any times where there's like an objection from the company internally of like, I don't want to do that, or I don't agree with that, but it's the right thing to do. Like, where are those conversations coming up these days for you?
This all kind of comes back to something that business owners that we have to learn is like setting expectations. I've found because design needs to be bold. Like I said, in order to stand out, you have to do what your competitors aren't doing to some extent in order to get traction. So framing with context is very important. This is why we did what we did. And you never go wrong with tracing that logic back to what their customers say. So it's kind of a bulletproof, version of justifying your behavior, and also justifying it to what they already said their goals were. Like, something we always include in our, kickoffs and initial conversations is some reference of, okay, fast forward 3 months down the line, all the design and dev is complete. Like, what does success look like? And this is like the age old question that you probably know this as well, is like, when your customers tell you what success looks like, they're painting the roadmap for you, and all you have to do is follow. So that's a lot of it. Design can be a very emotional thing, especially for people who are very attached to the brand. They're sensitive about how their brand is portrayed. And something we always do is visual references. So pulling up, references of competitors, like, hey, what do you think about, these 3 to 5 industry competitors? What do you like? What do you dislike? Something we always do, like, on calls as well. I always prefer to meet in person with clients, but when we can pull up like on-screen walkthroughs and seeing, marketers' eyes as they look at websites, as they look at like colors, you can see like the F pattern that they take when they look across the page. So just kind of taking all that into account, and then presenting work is also very important too. So the way that you frame anything creative, brand 0 to 1, you have to warm them up and show them the process. Like, this is how we got here, and present it with, a premium context as work needs to be done. I'm sure it's the same with, video editing and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it.
So very much. What's usually like the trigger for you that folks are usually reaching out and say, okay, it's time for a rebrand, time for a redesign, time for a new website?
Yeah, there's many. A lot of times it's a new marketing hire. So if a new marketer gets in, the first thing that they usually have to deal with is an outdated website or not knowing how to use it. They call on their budget and their team for help. And a lot of times it starts a new project. Another thing is funding is another one. So a lot of times when companies get funded, they have to add like new features, or they have more resources to put into their brand and looking really good online. Another part of it is just, underperforming marketing performance. We've had like one of our past clients, they're a Medicare company, and they were not thrilled with how their paid advertising was working. They wanted to focus on their brand, and they really allocated a budget around that, which I would say is not the most traditional. But I am a firm believer that, nailing your positioning and nailing your marketing means nailing the website. It's like it's what sales should reference, it's what marketing should reference. And it's supposed to move fast too. Like, I think with the technology right now, I mean, and the way we're passing it on to our clients is that, the website doesn't have to be a 3-month or a 2-quarter long process anymore. It can be something that moves fast. It can be like social media in the sense that you can post updates to an audience and doesn't have to go through a large approval process.
That's fascinating, because there's what I find also is the need for updated or new customer stories, video, testimonial, social proof often comes in line with a website redesign. They're like, all right, we've got space here for new social proof because we know we need it, and everything usually aligns because of these triggers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm kind of curious if we move into that part of the way you design social proof. Like, where do you see that it actually moves the needle? Where is the best places that you've seen? Okay, I got to put some social proof here, some customer stories here, that it actually, yeah, makes an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I've made so much content on like the value of social proof. I think, and this is kind of a potentially controversial take, and I don't really care because it's right.
Bring it.
But yeah, like people can argue with the wall if they disagree. But the more social proof, the better. It being relevant social proof and not,
Yeah.
going from a totally different industry or non ICP related. But for standard rules, having some form of it in at least two places above the fold, things like, amount of customers served, like faces and headshots, like we have data that backs up, we use a tool called Microsoft Clarity, which tells us all about, dwell time on websites, what pages are the most visited. What we've seen is that when people stuff all their, it's a practice that I've made. A lot of marketing teams will have a dedicated testimonials page and just put all of their testimonials on it. When that is like the worst thing you can do because it's one of the least traffic pages on the site. Only your warmest customers are going to go there, and so it's hard to use your most valuable, trust gaining, most powerful sales asset in testimonials throughout the buyer journey. But B, it should be relevantly placed. Like a mistake a lot of people make with testimonials is that they put like a big paragraph of just copy and text. And when in reality you want to like pull out the most powerful like one sentence, things that are, revenue related or display like their ideal full outcome, put that right at the top. And the golden rule is like videos are way more powerful than photos. So having elements of both, like not just photos and quotes, but literally people who are your customer achieving the results that they want, getting them to say their before and after and end state, things that you do well, like prompting them to get that out of them. Like a website becomes infinitely more effective when, design and everything aside, when you have relevant social proof on the site. So can't emphasize that enough.
I got to unpack some of that because it's funny. I always talk about folks like, hey, you should definitely have a wall of love, a customer stories page where you have all that because it's great for sales enablement. As you said, more of the warm customers further down the sales process. And now you're like, wait, that's like, okay, yeah, sure, have that. But yeah, what you really need to do is infusing them everywhere else on the site. That's huge. And I feel like that's probably a huge, often missed opportunity for a lot of sites.
Yeah, dude, I think what you're doing is like it's going to be infinitely more valuable in the future because you talked about like differentiators. How do you stand out in the noise? No one can replicate like actual videos of customers. Obviously you can make an AI generated video, but talk
But
about like
that's
the worst
a
way.
real customer, like
Right.
of a real company. There's only one of them, of that person at that company with their story.
Exactly. We use a tool called Senja for like I'm so heavily invested in that. Like I see nothing but up and to the right for, anything that's human related on websites just as a tool. Because that's our differentiator these days, With the more and more I don't have any data to back like how many more websites are being indexed, but I imagine it's a lot. Two agencies are in an RFP process and one has testimonials and the other doesn't. Like who do you that's like a David and Goliath scenario. Like they're obviously gonna go with the one with social proofs.
It lowers the perceived risk and of the indecision. Can I trust them? Will this actually happen? No, actually, look, there's a ton of people who have done it. They're happy. I can see it. It's almost like our biological nature, the way we are social we are. We see another person. Now we feel more confident
Yeah,
if they had a good experience. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
And then, yeah, I'm curious, like on the diversity of social proof. I think that's huge, and that's important for sure. I feel like back in the day, it was very common and normal and fine to just have some text quotes and a name associated to it. But I feel like today there's so much mistrust around fake reviews, AI slop, and like you could create that, and people are like, how do I know if that's actually real?
Mhm.
You seen that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think like distrust is at an all time high. Like it's never been in shorter supply. I think when it comes to social proof and the testimonial side, something that Senja does really well is like linking back to third party sources. And there's obviously a line here. Like for example, on your conversion page, we've actually seen an A/B test. You don't want to put linkable social proof on your conversion page because you know like if, for example, if you put like a G2 badge that links to a page with all your other competitors, like people are going to click that and go there. So there's some strategy around it, but linking back to even like light boxes, even if you have a static testimonial section, if you can open that up into like a full video that expands on it, that's kind of like the bread, I call it breadcrumbing. It's something that's small, condensable, digestible, and they're like, ooh, like that's really interesting. They can click more and you get more validation like it that's relevant to it. And also the placement of it too. So if you have outcomes with clients that fall into a specific service or customer ICP category, we just did this on our website, is we have like 12 service pages for pharmacy, Medicare, health tech, medical device, like all the different verticals in healthcare that we serve, and having relevant, testimonials on each of those from people that are in that industry that we've served. So all in all, like the more is always going to be better, but then like the nth degree, like percentile changes, like the dialing in of the optimization lies in really making those most effective is the placement of them on your website too.
Being able to build the proper social proof per ICP for the right landing pages, maybe even write about around a specific product, and then making sure it's infused with that diversity of styles and content. I love the idea of a breadcrumbs, or you have the appetizer, and then you can have link to the entree. If you're like, this is a good meal, let me get some more. I mean, I like some good cheese. That was a good analogy.
Yeah. Something I was going to shout out on your site too. I love the interactive like video widget you have here. Like we've done like standard chat bots on websites and we don't see, I think it's just to a point now where they're just not novel anymore. People get annoyed by it. But I love like I don't know if we use a tool called Video Ask, which I don't know if that's what you're using, but it's like, it's literally, it's Alex's face on a website, like answering your customers' questions. Like that's amazing. And that kind of goes back to some of the stuff we talked about too. But I just wanted to shout that out because I think it's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. The props on that is a good direction. It definitely points towards the human element of it wasn't just thrown together with AI. It's funny. I know someone who's just started a business and he used Lovable and ChatGPT, and he sent a link to me to review. And I was trying to figure out a nice way to reply, because even the image itself was generated by ChatGPT of him, that he gave it to him, and it looked very clean and professional on one hand, but I'm like, this feels completely inauthentic. There's too many words. It's so verbose. Where's your story? Where's your pictures of like really you in a real world environment?
Yeah. He was at a conference we were about that. And he's holding a product or a product marketing conference in and of himself. And his website is like totally vibe coded. And it's just a horrible user experience. No like testimonials to be found on that entire website. And I was like, man, like there's such a great opportunity to like such low hanging fruit here to make this better. Like I know what you mean of like not like having to bite your tongue, but just being like, okay, there's, there's surface area for improvement here. So, I mean, stuff when I see stuff like that too, it also just makes me infinitely bullish on the stuff that we do. Like even to the nth degree, like if this gets so good that like we're one-shotting near perfect websites, you're not going to have the relationship with the customer that actually invokes that buying decision. I read a lot of Greek mythology. There's like this the story of this guy who's like cursed to like always push a rock up a hill, and he always gets
Yeah.
like to like very close to being done and he falls back down again. I would say that's like kind of what AI is, in the sense that it lets you get like all the way there, but it's physically impossible to get to the point where it's, the conversion event where we're actually earning trust. And then that falls apart at some point, but some version of that where it's like it'll get you so close to where it's like, oh man, like it's infinitely excited to keep prompting, keep getting there.
If you're relying on it to help you and already know exactly the end output and get you there by itself, just you and it, and you don't know the process, you don't know how to get there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's going to happen. You're going to push it all the way, then you're going to fall back, and you're just going to feel like I'm close, but I'm never there. The
Yeah.
difference, I think, is what I've heard a lot of folks is say, if you already know how to get there, you already know what you're trying to do, and you're just like, all right, let me help me part of the process, take care of this part of the process, take care of this part of the process. Then AI's fine tool. It's helping you make each of those incremental steps further, but you have to already have the roadmap, the plan, the end game point, and then it's just help execute. I am kind of curious for myself if you've seen a situation where you're like mid redesign and the client realizes like their testimonials are out of date. So like they got all their objects and things are working, and they're like rolling that ball uphill, and they're like, wait, I don't have any of these, or you notice it, they don't have any, or they're out of date. What do you do at that step? Do you just kind of keep rebuilding it and like leave it as a placeholder? Do you stop and say go collect some real quick? Like what's the process there you usually recommend?
Yeah, so something is always going to be better than nothing. So even if they are outdated, a lot of times it's recommending having something live. Something we've also done too, if the company is new to market, having character testimonials. So if they don't have a ton of, relevant customer testimonials, they can reach out to people in their network and speak to the people behind the product rather than if they don't have a ton of, surface area behind the project, the company itself. But also just getting new ones is something we always recommend too. So a lot of times they do that either over email, attributing them to words and things, companies like Terraleap do a great job of doing that as well, even though we haven't referred work to you yet. But yeah, it's just a very higher priority to have something. We don't launch a site until there's some form of, captured testimonials that we can use to work into the above the fold. And sometimes like there's multiple forms of social proof too, like, industry certifications, logos we don't find to be very effective because they're very replicatable. And a lot of times we find that like, we worked with this small, division of this company that's of, enterprise company. We just want their logo on their website. But yeah, testimonials are, very important for to go live with a redesign before we launch. Always.
Make that comment of like what is a logo? I have worked with Salesforce.
Yeah.
I actually have, and I guess I could put their logo on there, but it was like this one small subdivision of a thing, and it was under
Yeah.
something else, and it was not even related to customer videos. But I
Yeah.
did work with them.
Yeah. I saw a video on YouTube where this guy, I think the video was packaged something like how to get like 80 years of social proof or social value on your site in 10 minutes or something like that. And he just sent a bunch of emails and he had like a hidden disclosure that let him use like, CNN, Fox News, like all these logos on his website. And he was like technically allowed to do it. And it was stretching the line so far.
My gosh.
But
And that just hurts every credibility out there. Like
yeah,
trust, comes back to the people because you're not going to take up a real person because that's a whole separate level of just it's easy to grab a logo, no one's paying attention of a big company, but a real person, a real title, they can be tied back. There's so much value there. And I love your point of getting alternate types of testimonials, not just customer if you're earlier stage. I've seen, and we've done this for a couple folks, is like partner testimonials. So if you have somebody that's like part of your solution that you can pull in, or even investor testimonials who are investing in, and they can talk about why they're doing this and the excitement of that, or other industry partners that are in the space. There's a lot of different angles then, or even like founder testimonials if you really go that far. If you have a couple different people, and it's a different approach, doesn't give you the same credibility and validity, but it's definitely better than nothing. And there's some value in revealing the people behind the brand or are supporting the brand. There's still value there.
yeah, yeah. The worst thing you can do is have nothing, it's like what can set us apart from our, competitors or like what can we do that cannot be replicated is a good prompt for, any company, whether you're trying to figure out your own positioning or, trying to make your website effective. Like that's a very valuable prompt to carry over into what you're trying to put online for sure.
Yeah. So in this age of AI, we talk about it all the time. AI is making it very possible for someone to generate a website that looks decent, even somewhat trustworthy. So, is design still a thing to be thought about, or is like you kind of beyond design now? You're looking at these other elements, or is design itself matter much in today's AI world?
Yes, I do. And this isn't just me kind of like standing on a pedestal. Like I actually do buy into the fact that when production becomes so easy, like differentiation becomes more important. And that then leads to the seeking out of the actual experts that want to look better online. I mean, since we've specialized, we've gotten multiple more inbound leads from people that are in our industry. I'm not going to pretend that I saw the writing on the wall, but I knew we had to position ourselves around our best case studies and testimonials to really build value and authority in healthcare. And that's been the single best thing that I've done so far. There's going to be more and more service providers that are everything for everybody. And when you can differentiate and show like, hey, to our point with testimonials, like I've accomplished the results that you're looking for someone exactly like you. That's where the value lies. And we even at the conference that we went to in Florida, a lot of the most profitable agencies, the most, you know, the freelancers, the fractionals in B2B that are killing it do one thing for one person and they're world class at it. I interviewed Anthony Perry, who's on the podcast about a year and a half ago almost. And he said, even when you're an agency and you have three different pricing models, that is still effectively three different businesses. I think we're all kind of circling the plane around like what is the one outcome for the one person, but there's a podcast about agency habits, and he talks about like narrowing down your ICP to like a meme level of like how can you know them so well that you know you're speaking to them only.
Yes.
And like if you go to a conference and you say like, oh, we serve B2B SaaS, or you're like, okay, that's you know, but how can you say like, okay, we work with you know $5 to $10 million private equity backed B2B SaaS who's just had a bad experience with you know their paid ads agency or whatever. Now you're like you know differentiated in the sense that it's going to be impossible to a send you the wrong customer, or you know people just aren't going to forget you. You know.
Getting more specific, more niche is going to be essential for any business, definitely service. But I feel like because of AI in this world where we can create our own software, I feel like even software companies need to be in the same mentality of offering, having that clarity, meme clarity of what who they're serving and why, and nothing can then replace them. All right, I gotta finish. If you can help me finish this statement here. In 18 months, B2B companies that haven't figured out blank on their websites will lose deals they should be winning.
They haven't in 18 months they haven't figured out. I would say their differentiator. That's kind of like what we just talked about. But if you haven't figured out how you're differentiated from A, your competitors, and B, from the people that your potential clients are considering, then with an abundance of choice and opportunities, then they're going to go with, you know, whatever is the first available to them. And you don't want to be just what's available. You want to be what's optimal to them. So I would say differentiation again.
We're on the same page on a lot of pieces when it comes down to trust and credibility and the content, and your website just all comes together, the importance of that. Where can folks go to learn more about you and connect with you, Andy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thank you. Like, I could tell, like, even when we connected above the fold, like, you're a genuine person. You went around and you talked to a lot of people. You added value first, and you stick around. Like I said, you're like basically the core example of what we talked about in the beginning of, you know, adding value and going first. So I want to commend you for what you're doing. This was like the highlight of my day. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So I want to commend you to keep going, and I hope we get to work together at some point. But yeah, you can find me. Our website domain is mmg.studio, and I'm perpetually on LinkedIn. So if you go to Alex's LinkedIn and look at his mutual connections, you'll find me in there somewhere. But yeah,
Love it. And also subscribe to your podcast, Marketing by Design, right?
yes, absolutely. And you'll also find this episode over there at some point as well, because we're going to recycle
Well,
it.
because we share content distribution everywhere. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So whether you're listening to this on mine or Andy's, we're all connected. This has been a pleasure, man. And we will be talking more soon.
Amazing. Love it.